Hello and welcome to WEC TALK, the podcast series from the FIA World Endurance Championship. I'm Martin Haven. In this episode, racing is back. We'll chat to Phil Hanson about racing in the European Le Mans Series and the World Endurance Championship. In the Beckett briefing, Louise rounds up the news from the ELMS and we look forward to WEC racing in September. But first, we catch up with drivers turned team managers Nicolas Lapierre and Nicolas Minassian. We'll start this episode talking to two drivers who have been at the top flight of sports car racing and have recently become team managers. Nicolas Lapierre from Cool Racing and Idec Sport's Nicolas Minassian. The first question for both of them, how good does it feel to be back racing again? Here's Nico.
It feels fantastic. I mean, we were testing a couple of times after March, but finally we are back in a full paddock. You know, we see other drivers, other cars, and that's great. We had the prologue already, and it felt good to be on track with other cars, and we enjoyed it very much. And we are really looking forward to the race this weekend. You know, it's a long time since Austin at the beginning of the year was our last race, so we are very happy that it's finally coming this weekend.
It's just like it's like being alive again. I am like where my life has been all this time, and it's been tough, you know. It's been a long time. You feel strange because we're always on the go, always busy. We've been preparing. But when you prepare, you want to prepare for something, and it's good that this something is happening actually because it's been a long time.
Both teams are competing in the European Le Mans Series in LMP2. How tough is the competition?
Yeah, in the LMP2, the battle is really, really tough. I mean, the last couple of years, it was more and more cars, and the driver lineup are also really good, I guess, because there is not so much space in the LMP1. So you have some really good drivers coming here, and it's tough. I mean, and the teams, they're also getting more and more professional, and it's getting super interesting, and the level is really high. A lot of cars, so it's a very good fun to race here.
I think this category is very strong because first of all, it's a bit like you're not sure what you're doing in single seater for the youngster, and they're coming into this ELMS championship. The team are very well oiled. You know, they've been here for many years. They're strong, and what's interesting about it is not only the pure speed you can get when you do single seater, but suddenly you're working with an engineer and you're working on strategy. You have long races, you have different tire compounds, you have lots of setup to be doing to it, you have great tracks, and the competition is very strong. You know, you've got drivers who have been in F1 and have done something else, won Le Mans and have just doing this. The car are very close together, they're very fast as well. So yeah, he's one of the top championship in Europe, if not in the world.
How are our duo adapting to the demands of being a team manager?
It's a bit more busy, to be honest, and but I like it a lot. I mean, since I was in Alpine already, or Dragon Speed, I try to help a bit on the other part of the driving, you know, and this came more important in Cool Racing because the team was pretty new last year. So I jumped into it, and I really loved it. So I became a team owner this year, actually, and I'm a shareholder of the team. And it's a lot more work, but I really love it, you know. And we try to bring some young drivers now in the team. We are running LMP3 and the Ligier series as well, trying to bring young drivers and helping them to go through the step of endurance racing is something that I really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to it. I've been to many teams in endurance series, so I like to see what they do and to pick up the good things, and we try to build everything together in our team, and also try to avoid to do the mistake that I've seen on other teams. So I guess it's more the experience I have working for so many teams that will help me in my new job.
Oh, now I have slowly done the switch. You know, when I was already racing in P2, 2014, 15, 16, this was in the back of my mind. I think I stretched my racing career a little bit longer than some, because I just love it. I still love it. If you ask me to go back behind the wheel and you tell me it's a 10-year contract, I do that again, but it's not going to happen. So what I do now is still what I love to do. Is a little bit more, you need to have the eye everywhere when you do that job. Not only you do a bit of organizing, but as well you're trying to motivate the whole team to be able to perform at their best. So I'm very meticulous, and the people who are around me in the team are very meticulous as well. And you have to be, because the level is so high. So it's about organizing. You win a race at the workshop. And once you really well organize at the workshop, you arrive on track. All you do is put it into practice and trying to don't let the pressure get to you. And I've got a very good crew of people with me. They all are so hungry. They just want to be the best pit stop. They want to prepare the best. We've got a very good system of rotation of parts with the mechanics and with the technical director. The drivers are really fired up. I mean, I think my experience as a driver has helped me to bring this inside the team in a competitive manner, but with the will to make everybody works together. Because the team is got to be a team, You cannot have one or two persons who are good. You need everybody to gel together. And I love doing this. This is my main things I do in the team, making everybody gel together.
Both Nico and Nick race for some impressive organisations. What did they learn there that they're now trying to bring to their own teams?
I mean, it's all about details. In endurance racing, you have to be super prepared, and all the small details there and there you can see in the teams and the way they operate tires, bodywork, management of the engineering and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, strategy. How do you run the strategy? What numbers are you looking for? And all this stuff. I was already really interested into it when I was in the other teams, and now I try to kind of teach my new team, because the team is pretty new, how to do it. And I guess it will help us to improve faster. Last year we already had a great season with the win in the WEC, a few pole positions, so this was really good. And so we try to make this learning curve a bit more high.
Every single team bring you something. I think there is already the culture, which is very good to have different culture. The French have got their own way of working, the American as well, the Brit. English is the team I've worked the most, very, very high level and straight to the point. The English is black or white. It's not gray or purple or whatever, So I've learned to work with different culture, and I'm trying to mix this all together. I think you always take something strong from a manufacturer, which you learn a lot, but you cannot reproduce exactly what you learn from a manufacturer to a privater, because there is different politics involved. You work with a team that is funded by privately. You have a driver or a different sponsor. You're looking for a budget to make the team run properly. You don't have the whole funding that you're wishing to have. So you need to find the best compromise sometime, And that's like is very interesting, because you don't have whatever you want. As a manufacturer, you just follow the protocol. And then after, if you follow the protocol, and normally you're not far off, because it's so big, there's so much budget involved and so much brain in it, then, you have your say as a driver, but you need to follow the protocol of the engineer, because they do have lots of information. And the private team is like more in the old days, you have like, it's more the team that the way you put the team together and you gel it together, and or you're gonna compromise one guy to have a little bit better from the other, driver-wise or mechanic-wise or engineering-wise. So it's different, a little bit different, even though you can reproduce that in both sides. If you can have the best of both, it's even better, but you cannot always have everything you want. But I have learned a lot from that. I think Peugeot is one of the teams I've learned the most.
What is the hardest part of the job?
Right, the hardest part is that the timing is really tight. I have to go at the track earlier than before, and I'm basically I have no stop during the whole day, and also during the like today is the off day. It was supposed to be the off day, but I'm at the track already at 7, and it's kind of non-stop. So the rhythm has changed for sure, but it's cool. I mean, I'm young and I love it, so it gives me a lot of motivation to do this, and I hope that the team will step up as well in the LMP3 and other category we are running, and this will be a great reward.
It's very busy, huh? But at least I love being busy. It's a lot harder than I think it's not like a lot harder because I find it easy because I work in my passion. So it's not difficult. I love it. I'm lucky. But the difference is that when you're a racing driver, you don't see all that is involved, and you shouldn't, because if you see this, sometimes you just need to concentrate on your driving. Now the hardest bit is that I'm not behind the wheel, because I do look at it and I'm thinking, wow, I could have a go in it. I will always have the fire in me to drive a racing car. So that's the hardest bit, yeah.
What's been the biggest surprise for Nico and Nick?
That's a good question. I mean, I didn't have so many surprises. As I told you, I was already in the other team, kind of try to help. So I was already seeing different aspects. But it's a good question. I mean, the season will start now, so we will see how the drivers are working together, the engineers as well, and we have to be very careful about it, that the team is really working together. That's the priority. But as the season starts, we will really see how it goes and how we have to manage it.
The biggest surprise is the enjoyment I'm getting out of it. Is no far from when I'm driving. It's not exactly there, but the surprise is, I really love it. And I am very glad I did that switch. Really glad, because I love people, relationship with people. And when I feel like people want to work for you and I want to work for them, and you feel this powerful thing that make you strong, and you feel it. And then I'm thinking of my past, when I used to drive, when I used to see good teams together, or people put that together is amazing. And when we did that with Idec last year, because we won the ELMS, so proud of it, because it's not only me, it's everybody. We all work together. I cannot say, the trophy is Minassian. No way. It's everybody. I love that.
Knowing what they know now, would they go back and do things differently as a driver?
That's a good question. I mean, for sure. You see now that the team owners, they try to judge the driver very fast, and now the driver, they have the sim and everything, so they need to be straight on the pace. And this I was kind of not good at it, and it always took me. I'm a driver which needs a bit of time and learning and looking the data and stuff, and I'm not good at the sim. I don't like it, so I would have pushed it a bit more to be straight on the pace and to not lose any time on track. For sure, this is the main difference.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you would. Sometimes you're stupid as a driver, it's just like you don't think, but that's a role as well I'm trying to help my driver with, and I'm doing a lot of work in the background with the driver, because if I can help them to become even better, to don't make the certain mistake I've made, it's good for them, I think that's maybe a good point in the team, that there is a driver sometimes, somebody that has done lots of stuff, and can explain them, look, I've made that mistake. If I was you, I would do that way, or the way you talk to somebody, because sometimes you cannot say exactly how he come out. You need to be diplomatic for a certain thing. If you want a bit more, it's not cheating the way you talk. It's about expressing yourself and the work ethic you need to have.
Time now to catch up with our Louise Beckett for the Beckett briefing. Louise, what's in the news this week?
We are back on track. That's all I have to say.
We are back. The European Le Mans Series has started. So sports car racing in Europe begins as we head towards Spa and then Le Mans for the World Endurance Championship. So fantastic news for everybody, really.
Yeah, it is. Before we go on to that, I just want to say Nick Minassian saying that drivers do stupid things sometimes. I will never forget my interview with Nick. I think it was in Bahrain quite a few years ago when he was driving, where he used the best phrase ever, "I'm not a Muppet." That will stay with me forever, that phrase.
Yeah, European Le Mans Series action. So there is a chance to watch it as well live this weekend.
Yeah, so European Le Mans Series is back at Le Castellet for the opening round, which is brilliant this weekend. You can watch it if you want to get your racing fix on the official WEC app and the WEC Facebook account on Facebook Live. So you can watch all the action there and see how everyone's doing getting back in a car rather than being in a seat in their lounge or wherever they may be with their sim.
Yes, this is where you remember where a sim is different from a racing car. And the other factor, of course, that is different from a racing car is the slight jeopardy. So we need to have a quick word and a shout out to Catherine Legg, who was injured this week in her car.
Yeah, so as we're recording this, Catherine is due to go in for an operation on her leg. She has been tweeting from hospital to say she's in good spirits and thanks to the team and everybody involved in how well they dealt with getting her out of the car and the response so far. So yeah, we wish you a speedy recovery, Catherine.
Absolutely right. She was down to be racing at Le Mans for the Richard Mille team with an all-female lineup. So hopefully, given 8 weeks to recover, she will still be able to take up that spot. Obviously, we'll talk about Le Mans as we get a little bit closer. But Catherine isn't the only name that is relatively new that we need to talk about. And I sense that a Louise crush might be on the horizon.
Michael Fassbender.
Okay, for those who, like me, aren't really aware of Michael Fassbender, give us the details.
You should know Michael Fassbender, but in saying that, as I have told you the story before, when I first met him back in 2017 when he was racing for Ferrari in the North America Challenge, I met him the night before in a restaurant and I didn't have a clue who he was either, and I had to Google him, and his ever so famous girlfriend at the time, I think is now his wife, Alicia Vikander, who was Tomb Raider. So that was a little bit embarrassing on my part. I thought he might be related to Eddie Irvine or something because he had an Irish twang. But yes, so back to business. Michael, yes, we saw him in COTA for Ferrari, but he is now racing with Porsche in the Proton competition car. And last year at Le Mans, I saw him in that garage with Patrick Dempsey. And at the time, I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if something's going on here. And it would seem that it is.
Yeah, Patrick Dempsey, of course, also aligned with Proton for the Dempsey Proton competition team in World Endurance Racing. Michael Fassbender raced in a Porsche last year as well in the Porsche Racing Cup in Germany, which is just below the Carrera Cup Deutschland. And there is a series of programs up online that you can watch, Road to Le Mans, or Michael Fassbender's Road to Le Mans at least, which documents that season, the highs and the significant lows when you're learning to become a race driver as well. It's good grounding and it's good watching as well.
It's also worth looking out for the Le Mans 2020 entry list, which is now out, because you can see if his name's on that one too. But also, we're going next to Spa, obviously, for WEC, and a handful of the WEC teams are actually using the ELMS schedule to their favour. So we've got the Jota 38, the Aston Martin 98, AF Corsa 54, Red River 62 and AF Corsa 83 will all be taking part in the ELMS Spa race, which is happening just before our one, just to get that extra track time, getting the team back together after this long break, which is a brilliant idea and great forward thinking from those teams.
That's absolutely right, because although European Le Mans Series will be busy leading up to the Spa and Le Mans weekends, for World Endurance cars, the last time they even turned a wheel with the engine running was in February in COTA. So it's been a long while, and sim racing isn't quite going to bridge the gap in the same way. And Le Mans have also started to issue some guidance of what they're expecting to be able to do for the fans that already have tickets, because you can't just turn up and walk in and buy a ticket on the gate as you used to. Pre-purchase tickets will be required.
Absolutely, yes. So the ACO have been working closely with the French government and authorities to find out how they make sure that everybody is safe who is attending Le Mans this year. And what they're doing is they're splitting up the enclosures into villages of a maximum of 5,000 people in each village, just to make sure that people are separated, hygiene is kept to a standard. Everybody will have to wear a mask once they enter into the areas. And the ACO will be contacting you. If you have already purchased a ticket, the ACO will be contacting you and explaining everything about how you get there, when you get there, what's going to happen, the camping situation. So they're completely all over it. But do not turn up if you do not have a ticket, because you will not be able to get in. You must have purchased a ticket in advance. That could still be possible right now, but you cannot just turn up there.
So for the fans looking away from the track, it's going to feel quite a lot different. On the track, though, it will be business as usual. We have a full field. We have a mouth-watering race in prospect. And September, as we heard from Ben Crawley earlier in the WEC Talk series, with the cooler temperatures, could be a record fastest ever Le Mans. So plenty to look forward to. Louise, have a good couple of weeks. We will speak to you next time out for lots more from the Beckett briefing.
Take care. Bye.
Finally, we'll catch up with a young driver who's racing with United Autosports both in the ELMS and in the World Endurance Championship. So welcome, Phil Hanson. Where are you and how glad are you to be there?
We're back at Paul Ricard for the first round of the European Le Mans Series. It's a bit delayed in the change of venue. We were going to be in Barcelona, but obviously with circumstances, but we've ended up at Paul Ricard, and sooner than a lot of other sports. I'm quite happy that it's turned out the way it has. And it's the first day of the prologue today. We just finished off the day in P2 at the end with my lap in a quali sim, which wasn't too far from the fastest of the day, I think by Nicolas Lapierre. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but not much. We're at the sharp end, which is where we want to be. We had a test on Friday just to dust off the cobwebs, and I was very rusty. It was actually the longest time I hadn't been racing since I started karting, 6 years ago. So for me, it was quite a shock to be at home for 4 months. And I was talking with someone about this, how you try and stay in the racing mindset for the first week, 2, as you don't know how long it's going to be, and then you give up, and then you turn into sort of like sedentary lifestyle, and yeah, you lose touch. And a lot of drivers typically have a winter break if they don't decide to do, either Daytona in January or the Asian Le Mans Series over the winter months. And I've always typically found myself in a position where I've always entered at least one of them, with the last year doing the Asian Le Mans Series. So this was a shock for me not to be driving for 4 months.
Well, everybody's been doing a lot of racing online. Have you been doing that? And has it kept you sharp, which everybody said was half the point? Yeah,
half the point. The other half being, messing about with all the other racing drivers. I did actually. I joined it a bit late. A lot of people had been on it for longer than me, so had a bit of catching up to do. I felt like I was a bronze driver over on the sim racing. But yeah, it does keep you sharp, and it's nice to keep your eye on a little bit. But at the end of the day, you're driving a computer. It's not the same as turning up to scene at 310 kilometers an hour, trying to turn in flat. It's a very different experience than turning flat out scene on iRacing when you're or R-Factor, whichever track might have for Ricard. But yeah, it's a very different experience. It's good to some extent, but I always think of it as like, anyone that goes pole, it's you're pole on a computer. It's a very different experience.
And senior is one of those deep breath corners, isn't it? So first time fully committed, how much was the heart racing?
It was, it's amazing how quickly things do come back to you. Senior wasn't actually the aspect that I was struggling with. It was more just getting back the feeling on that first day of testing. But, it's very interesting though, how after a day of testing, the moment you get back in the car, 4 days later, it's like you'd been in it an hour before. As soon as you get everything back, it's like second nature.
Well, you started racing in LMP3. You graduated up to LMP2, where you now are. You've raced in Asian Le Mans, in European Le Mans Series, and now in World Endurance Championship. So that ladder of progression has worked for you during your career, hasn't it?
Yeah, which is a great thing for the sport, especially with younger drivers coming into it now. When I first started endurance racing, it was kind of like, what are you doing here? Why haven't you done single seaters? And there wasn't really progression back then, because LMP3 wasn't quite at the same level that it is now. And that's good, because obviously if kids are coming out of karting, like I came out of karting, you can understand the progression F4, F3, F2, F1. You didn't really see how people got into LMP1. You didn't understand the whole, at least I didn't understand the whole thing, from DTM drivers coming over, GT drivers moving up, drivers that have kind of gone to F2 and come across when there wasn't a space for them in F1. But now, if you're coming out of karts, you've got these kind of two clear ladders: F4, F3, F2, F1, or LMP3, LMP2, LMP1.
And I suppose the hook that gets everybody's interest is Le Mans. And for yourself, for the teams, for the drivers, it's coming at you fast, isn't it?
When you look at the calendar, now that we're getting going in middle of July, August is rammed. 3 races in 4 weeks, and then you're preparing for Le Mans, which is also going to be quite tricky with the regulations by the government and everything to try and manage the COVID spread and everything. It means that the actual race week of Le Mans is going to be a lot tighter than you'd seen in previous years, with no official test this year. So it's going to be very hectic these next few months, which is great, because I've had a very unhectic 4 months.
What do you think that you bring now with the experience you've got at Le Mans? What can you bring to the table that's different from when you came, maybe for the first time or for the second time?
I mean, obviously, every time you go to Le Mans, you fill up on experience. You could probably never have enough experience at Le Mans. The track changes sometimes every year, different changes. I'd never driven the track when there was grass down the side of the Mulsanne Straight, or when there was the big crest like you see in the GT1 times. The scary footage of Mark Webber flying through the air. That was just a YouTube video for me. It wasn't actually something I lived through. So what I know now is a combination of everything that they've done in safety and the natural changes through motorsport. And I'm sure that's going to happen in the next 10 years. So every year you turn up, there's always some change, some little difference and variant, which you need to adapt to. But at the same time, every time you go back to that track, the fundamentals and the fact that it's such an immense pressured race, 24 hours, and it's the most important race of your career. It's the Monaco of endurance racing. So it adds that little bit of pressure, and you try not to think about it, but every time you wake up in the morning and the car hasn't had an issue, it might pop out into the front of your head, and you might think, don't want to be making a mistake now that we've got through the night, when typically that's when you find all the mistakes happening, and there's morning hours. You think, wow, there's a lot of cars still going, and then in a 3-hour window, half the cars drop out. This year, with it being in September, there's going to be a longer night. That's going to be very interesting, I think. That's going to be one extra driver's full 2.5-hour stint. It's going to be in darkness. And how that will fare across the entire field will be interesting. Will the ELMS suffer more in the GT class? Will that cause more of a mess for the prototypes coming through? Will the balance shift to what you're going to aim at for the overall, because typically it was a case of getting a strong car through the daylight hours when the temperatures are up, nearly 30 degrees, and then making sure that your balance is also very similar at the night. Sometimes you're changing tire compounds and things to try and make sure the balance shift isn't too big. But this year, there's going to be a pretty 50-50 split between the night and the day. So you might see cars really strong at the night pushing forward, and then in the day they're kind of being caught up by everyone else. So I don't know. I don't think there's been a Le Mans in the last 10 years that's been held at that sort of time.
No, not in the last 40 years. Only once in 1968. So, and actually the tyre companies are saying that the chances are, unless it's really, really wet, it has the potential to be the fastest ever Le Mans. So any time behind the wheel right now is absolutely going to pay dividends when we get to Le Mans in September, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the drivers here and the teams here will be at Le Mans in September. So, for example, there's a night session going on right now, which a lot of people will be familiarizing themselves with the nighttime conditions. That's sometimes the trickiest part of Le Mans is the sort of things you don't really think about. The sun setting, how the fact that there's a lot of fast corners around, the second and third sector, which are blind. You're coming down in more sand, and there's a couple of kinks, and it's not the straightest of all straights, and you can't see the curves. I remember that in my first Le Mans, and that was a learning curve for me when I hit one of those curves and had a moment of my life.
Well, that's it for this WEC Talk. Thanks to all my guests, Nicolas Lapierre and Nicolas Minassian, Phil Hanson, and of course, Louise Beckett. We'll be back with more on Friday, the 31st of July, when we'll be looking forward to the World Endurance Championships return to racing in Spa-Francorchamps. Until then, stay safe and thanks for listening.